Right. Well, to begin with, as we know from Santayana, those who do not study history are condemned to repeat it. So we have to know about this tyranny so it doesn't come back again. Secondly, one of the original ideas we had is when students come to Washington and go to the Vietnam Memorial or the Korean War Memorial, they will say, well, why did we fight this war or this war? And we will say, well, hopefully our teachers will say, because of communism. Well, what is communism? Not only will they be able to visit our memorial now, but also to go online and learn about communism and why we fought those wars. Well, I think one of the most touching things that we've been able to do is to provide a registry, a global registry, so that people can put there the names, the other vital statistics about a father, a grandfather, an aunt, and uncle who died under communism. So these, the names of these victims, the names of those who sacrificed so much and were the victims of communism, will be preserved from now on. It's very much like the Ellis Island. If you've been up there at Ellis Island, there's a brick there of the name of somebody who came through Ellis Island and became a citizen. So it's that idea that we're trying to apply electronically with our global museum. Well, that's an interesting question, because if you look at what we've tried to do with the online museum, for example, a hall of infamy, in which we talk about the tyrants and the dictators of communism, that same principle can be applied to a bricks and mortar. And so we visualize a hall, a great hall, in which you have the tyrants and the dictators with perhaps their statues, but also with an interactive study or an interactive biography of that dictator, whether it's Pol Pot or Mao, Stalin, Lenin, Fidel Castro, and so forth. The same thing with what we call our gallery of heroes, that we see there again a great gallery with the good guys, people like President Reagan, President Truman, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Lech Walesa, Václav Havel, and so forth. And again, the same idea of a statue, perhaps, but an opportunity again for a visitor to press a button and to be able to see there on a screen the story, his story of that individual.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, one more thing is that, for example, if we go into sort of the great big hall of the bricks and mortar, we visualize the idea of a timeline of communism, which would go around the entire hall, and this would be something starting in 1917. It would be audio-visual. It would have posters. It would have audio. It would have film. It would have video. It would have all kinds of things, and it would tell the story year by year by year of communism from 1917 to 1991, which is where the Soviet communism fell, but then continuing today. It's an ongoing story. Tragically, we still have 5 countries which are under communism right now: China, Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, and Laos. And their story needs to be told. It's another reason why there's a need for the online museum. We have to tell the story, make people realize that China is not some kind of neo-capitalist country. It is still a totalitarian country politically. The party controls everything. It denies free speech, free elections, a free judiciary, free legislature. And therefore, we have to know whom we're dealing with. We're not just dealing with a potential economic partner in China. Well, I think a dialogue is good. I think there should be a dialogue. I think there should be an opportunity for exchanges, because when and as we can have people who understand freedom and can talk about freedom openly and freely in Cuba, this will then begin to develop more and more of I'm not talking about any kind of revolution, but a democratic opposition to to what's going on, has been going on in Cuba for 50 years. So I'm all for dialogue, but it can't just be one way. There has to be an opening up. And one of the things we're doing with the online museum is that we're streaming into Cuba, we're streaming into China, we're streaming into Vietnam. So in a very small way, we think this is the kind of dialogue which should be sustained between the two countries and the two peoples.
What about with the leaders of the countries?
Well, I think that you have to be careful about that you don't want people to think that if, say, Mr. Obama meets with Raul Castro, that this is an indication that we think that everything that Cuba under the Castro brothers is wonderful. There has to be some very careful description of what is going to be coming out of this kind of a dialogue. I would start not with the top level. I would start between Hillary Clinton and their Secretary of State or their Foreign Minister. See what happens. But it has to be two-way. It has to be an opening up of the people, so the people of Cuba know what is really happening around the rest of the world. Well, two stories. One story has to deal with the actual building of the memorial, which I'd like to tell. But the other is a very courageous woman, Czech, named Milada Horakova, who was a lawyer and was opposing and calling for a democratic opposition in the Czech Republic, or in Czechoslovakia at that point, in the late 40s. And she continued to speak out, even after the communists took over the government in 1948, 49, and 1950. They told her, you must be quiet, you must be still. And she was a member of the legislature, very prominent, a lawyer and legal scholar. And finally they said, if you don't stop, we're going to arrest you. She would not stop talking about freedom, about liberty, about democracy. They arrested her, had a show trial, and executed her, condemned her to death and executed her. And she was, and still is, the only woman leader who has ever been executed by the communists in Czechoslovakia. And she wrote a beautiful letter to her daughter saying that, I hope that you will continue to speak out for freedom and democracy after my death. And we gave her, the Victims of Communism Memorial, gave her posthumously, obviously, a medal, our Medal of Freedom, and that same daughter accepted it for her mother some 50 years after she had died. It was a very touching and beautiful moment.